Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, September 24th, 2021. The government is very afraid of the growing tax rebellion. According to the IRS Data Book, in 2020, the IRS collected $3.5 trillion from more than 240 million federal income tax returns. More than $736 billion in tax refunds were issued. IRS.gov received more than 1.6 billion visits, and 437 million files were downloaded. Of the taxpayers who participated in the 2020 Comprehensive Taxpayer Attitude Survey, 87% says it's not at all acceptable to cheat on your income tax. In addition, in 2020, $1 trillion was collected from payroll taxes. Now, this means that the federal government collected $2.8 trillion in income taxes plus another trillion from payroll taxes for a total haul of $3.8 trillion. Now, for many years, the government downplayed the impact of evasion on the income payroll tax system. Why? Well, because they didn't want to admit just how easy it was to evade the federal income tax. Finally, though, IRS Commissioner Rettig recently admitted that evasion cost the government at least $1 trillion a year. Think about that for a second. $1 trillion evaded is over 25% of the $3.8 trillion collected. So, what does tax evasion really mean? Throughout history, rulers have been able to collect taxes from the ruled only for as long as the ruled were satisfied with the services being provided and they believed the taxes were being assessed and collected fairly. When the ruled felt like they weren't getting the services they needed or that the tax system was unfair, they started resisting. Now, this resistance almost never starts out as an open revolt. Instead, because the rulers rely on the tax system to exist, the ruled just simply begin evading their taxes in protest. The rulers shrilly point out that tax evaders are just criminals, and some are. But widespread tax evasion cannot occur without the agreement of others. A plumber, for example, could not sell services at a lower price for cash if no one was willing to pay cash. The rapidly growing amount of federal income tax evasion is frightening our rulers because they see it for what it is, a rebellion against their policies and their tax system. They realize that it's not just the evaders, but many more of the ruled. They may not be evading taxes, but they are in sympathy and willing to help. Now, if our rulers were wise and really wanted to end the revolt, they would address the real issues. They would implement a fairer tax system and would listen to the concerns of the ruled about how their money is being spent. Unfortunately, throughout history, most rulers, when confronted with people protesting their actions, simply enact more laws and try to force the ruled to comply. Now, in this case, new laws are supposedly aimed at tax evaders, but because tax evaders are only a small percentage of total taxpayers, the new laws will affect everyone and will make more people feel justified in evading their taxes. This oppressive reaction has never worked in the past, and it won't work now. Now, the ruler's solution on how to handle people who dare to protest against them is hidden on page 88 of the General Explanations of the Administration's Fiscal Year 2022 Revenue Proposals that's published by the Department of the Treasury that took place in May of 2021. It's entitled, Introduce Comprehensive Financial Accounting Reporting to Improve Tax Compliance. Now, here are the main points of that proposal. Financial institutions will report gross inflows and outflows with a breakdown for physical cash, transaction with a foreign account, and transfers to and from other accounts with the same owner. This requirement would apply to all business and personal accounts from financial institutions, including bank, loan, and investment accounts, with the exception of accounts below a low de minimis gross flow threshold of $600 or fair market value of $600. Other accounts with characteristics similar to financial institution accounts will be covered under this information reporting regime. In particular, payment settlement entities would collect taxpayer identification numbers and file a revised Form 1099-K expanded to all payee accounts, again subject to the same de minimis threshold, reporting not only gross receipts, but also gross purchases, physical cash, as well as payments to and from foreign accounts and transfer inflows and outflows. Similar reporting requirements would apply to crypto asset exchanges and custodians. Separately, reporting requirements would apply in cases in which taxpayers buy crypto assets from one broker and then transfer those assets to another broker. Businesses that receive crypto assets and transactions with a fair market value of more than $10,000 would have to report such transactions. The Secretary would be given broad authority to issue regulations necessary to implement this proposal, and the proposal will be effective for tax years beginning after December 31st, 2022. Now, what's happening here really is that the IRS is admitting that it cannot control income payroll tax evasion simply by adding IRS agents. Well, wait a minute, you say. How can they do this? The Fourth Amendment states, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized." Now, probable cause exists when there's a reasonable basis for believing that a crime may have been committed, that's in order to make an arrest, or when evidence of a crime is present in the place to be searched. What probable cause now does the IRS have to collect this data on 100% of taxpayers when they claim that only 10 to 15% of taxpayers are committing serious evasion? Well, the answer to that is simple. There isn't any. The IRS has absolutely no probable cause to target all of us, but that's exactly what they're proposing to do. Now, just how does this impact each of us? Our rulers want detailed reports of all of our financial activity. They want to know who we receive money from and who we pay money to. And they're not looking just for large transactions that might indicate some kind of criminal activity. They want to know about everything so they can more closely monitor and control our day-to-day activities. One example that's real to those reading this newsletter is those who donate to Americans for Fair Taxation. Since AFFT is a 501c4 organization, donations are not tax deductible and they are not reported on your tax return. Consequently, there is no way for the IRS to know that you donated to AFFT under current law. However, with the new system in place, the IRS could very easily compile a list of everyone who donates to AFFT. And remember that the IRS considers AFFT to be a subversive organization, since our stated goal is to replace the income tax with the fair tax and, in the process, abolish the IRS. Of course, our rulers will scoff at this and say that all the data they receive under this program is confidential and they would never allow anyone to use this information to attack any of us. Yeah, right. The tax returns leaked to ProPublica were also confidential. And remember Lois Lerner, the IRS head of exempt organizations, and how she discriminated against groups to which she objected? Lesson learned. In conclusion, at least for now, the public pressure on the House Ways and Means Committee has forced them not to include this proposal in their new proposed income tax bill. But that hasn't stopped the rulers from sending their minions to all the Sunday news shows loudly proclaiming the need for this new proposal. They claim that it's necessary to stop evaders and that if you're not doing anything wrong, why should you care? Well, we care because we see this for what it is, an attempt to obliterate our Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search and seizure. Now, using their logic, if you're not doing anything wrong, why would you object to the police having the power to search your home without a warrant? Now, wouldn't you want the police to need probable cause before they could arrest you for just walking down the street? The willingness to show their utter contempt for the rights of the ruled so openly is clear and compelling evidence that the rulers are very much afraid of what this rapid increase in income tax evasion really signals. As the great French philosopher and Nobel Prize-winning author Albert Camus said, rebellion cannot exist without the feeling that somewhere in some way you are justified. Now, these tyrannical and desperate measures are doomed to fail. As the IRS becomes more intrusive in their enforcement efforts, more and more people will feel justified in rebelling against the system. And this will result in more tax evasion, not less, and reduced revenue to the rulers. Now, replacing the income payroll tax system with the fair tax will all but eliminate tax evasion without having to resort to draconian and unconstitutional laws. Now, to be fair, it won't eliminate all the reasons that make people feel justified in rebelling against the system, but the fair tax will make our rulers more accountable. With the fair tax, the cost of government cannot be hidden in the prices of the goods and services we buy. People will see just how much government is costing them on every retail receipt, and that will put them in a much better position to decide if the rulers are giving us our money's worth and to take actions at the polls if they're not. So, what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives, demanding that if the government really wants to eliminate the burden of filing income tax returns, they should enact the fair tax and do away with tax returns altogether. The great 18th century Irish statesman Edmund Burke made a statement that applies in many ways. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. We'll know how much tax we're really paying because taxes will no longer be hidden. Instead, they'll be shown on every retail receipt. If you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to fairtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under how it works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.